Have you taken a DNA test with Ancestry.com and now you're wondering, what does all this information that they're giving me mean? Well, today I'm going to give you a little introduction to DNA on Ancestry.com. Howdy, I'm Andy Lee with Family History Fanatics, and this is a segment of DNA. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and click on the bell if you want to be notified about upcoming episodes. Now, Ancestry DNA is the largest DNA database for genealogy purposes, and so it makes sense that a lot of people would test there first. So let's go through what some of that information means so that you can get acclimated to your new DNA test. So here we are on Ancestry.com, and I'm using my wife's account for today. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through where you can find your DNA and then what some of the information that Ancestry is giving you means. So the very first is, if you look at the very top of the screen here, you are going to see a link that says DNA, and that's where we want to go. Clicking on this will give you a drop-down menu, and there's several different options. You can go to the results summary, the story, the matches, the through lines, personal discovery projects, as well as to activate a test or to buy a new kit. We're going to start at the results summary, and actually links to all these others can be found on that results summary page. Here we are on the results summary page, and as you can see right off, if you want to activate a new test, there is a link to that right here in the top left corner. So if you need to buy a new test for a friend or for a family member that you are helping to test, then just click on this link to activate that. Next, on the other side of the screen, we have a couple of options. There is the view another test. Now, if you are sharing your DNA with somebody else, or if they're sharing their DNA with you, then you'll be able to view their DNA results by clicking on this link. For right now, if this is your first test, there's not going to even be this link right here, so don't worry about it. The next thing that's really important is the settings. We're going to go over some of these settings so that you can understand what information is going to be in there. Now, as we scroll down, we can actually see that there are some other things. For instance, there is this introducing Ancestry DNA traits, and this is actually a new feature that Ancestry has, that if you'd like to learn some of your traits that are actually coded in your DNA, then you can click on this link and learn some more information on it. It does cost some extra money in order to get that information. The Personal Discoveries project at the bottom of the page is there so that if you want to answer some questions in order to help in some DNA research, you can do that. But again, this is completely optional. Now, there's really three major parts of this. Now, if you look here, in the middle is going to be your DNA matches. We'll go over that. Over here is through lines, and I'm not going to go over that so much today, but my wife is going to have some videos about through lines so that you can see how that works. And then over at the far side is the DNA story, and these are the three main sections we're going to go over. But first, let's go up to the settings and let's see what kinds of things you can change about your DNA. So in the DNA settings, this is different than your account settings. And that's the first thing to remember, is you actually have some separate controls for your DNA than you do for your overall account. Now, this first section over here is the privacy section. And you can see that you have chosen right now to have your DNA matches listed. Now, you can change that, and what it's going to do is it's going to pop up this box and it's going to tell you what the consequence of changing that is. And really, if you change so that you're not having your DNA matched with other people, you're not going to see those DNA matches, and you're not going to have a lot of that functionality of the Ancestry website. In this case, I don't want to change because I want to have my matches shared with other people. Next is your display name. Now, you can actually display your DNA as your username, or you can display it as your real name. And you can just change that in this section right here. With the ethnicity profile display, if you want others to be able to see your ethnicity results, then make sure that this box is checked. And I'll show you what that comparison looks like in just a second. But if you don't want to share that information, then make sure that this box is unchecked. Now, scrolling down, you can have your DNA linked onto a family tree, and you can see that this test is actually linked onto one of my wife's family trees. The next part here is the research consent. And if you want to be able to participate in research, basically if you want Ancestry to be able to use your DNA, and that's going to be anonymized. But the information that you share as far as your heritage and some of those personal discovery questions answered, if you want them to use that as part of their Ancestry Human Diversity Project, then give your consent here. If you want to change that, you can always change your consent at any time. And finally, at the bottom is where you would go if you want to share your DNA with somebody else. And what you can do is you can just click on the Add a Person, and you're going to put in their email address or their username if they already have an Ancestry account. And you can select whether they are going to be a viewer, a collaborator, or a manager. And each one allows them to have different access levels to your DNA. So this is how you can actually share your DNA results with family members so that you can all collaborate together. Now, going back to the top here, on the right-hand side, we see that there is the download your raw DNA data. Now, I encourage everyone to do this as soon as you get your results. This data can be used on other websites, or you have it as a backup in case that for any reason the Ancestry site is no longer available. You still have that information that you paid for. Now, if for any reason you do want to delete your results, then this is where you're going to delete them. Now, this is not something that can be recovered, so make sure that you do want to delete your DNA data from the Ancestry servers. By following these links, it's going to take you the process of deleting that. Now, again, remember, this is not recoverable, so if you decide later that no, you actually want that information back, you're going to have to take another DNA test. Now, I told you could get to the other sections on that summary homepage, but you can also get to them through here. So we're going to go and we're going to start by looking at the DNA story. Now, DNA story is what a lot of people just call your ethnicity results, and it's what a lot of people think taking a DNA test is for. And for some people, that's really the only part of the test that they ever even look at. But let's go over, and Ancestry's really got a couple of parts to this. So first off is the ethnicity estimates. If we actually scroll into this map here, you can see that on the right-hand side, there are different areas that from testing your DNA and comparing it to their reference populations, they estimate that some of your ancestors are from. So for instance, in my wife's case, there's some ancestors that are probably from England, Wales, northwestern Europe, some from Germany area, some from Sweden, maybe even some from Norway. Now, clicking on each one of these, you're going to get a little bit more detail. So what you can see here is that this range of what Ancestry estimates, and again, these are just estimates, is somewhere between 61% and 96%. So that's actually a pretty big range. But you can learn a little bit about that area if you want to. Now, some of these, when we take a look at them, you'll see that this range is actually 0% to 10%. So even though it showed about 9% that Ancestry's estimate for Sweden is, that range is really from 0% to 10%. So it could be that there's really no ancestors. So if you've done extensive research on your ancestry already, and you're coming up with some of these results, be sure to go and check what the ranges are, because while you think, yeah, I don't have any ancestors from Sweden, why is Ancestry saying that I have ancestors from Sweden? Well, it's really because a lot of that DNA in Sweden in the reference population is similar to some other things, and that range might just be 0%, in which case it's not that your ancestry results are wrong, it's that you're looking at just one percentage as opposed to that range of percentages. Now, if you wanted to look at other populations that have tested, let's say, for instance, a big one that people like to ask about is Native American ancestry. You can always go down to the bottom here, and it's just right behind me, where it says, see other regions tested. And you're clicking on that, and it's going to show you all the regions that Ancestry tests for. There's more than 500 of them. So if we're looking at Native American, let's say that we know that it is a Cherokee or a Choctaw Native American ancestor that we have. We can go to the America region, and it's going to zoom in on that, and it'll show us what these different ones are. There's Native American Andean, which is down in South America, so that's not going to be it. There's Native American North, Central, and South, and then there's additional South American communities. So we want the Native American North, Central, and South. Clicking on that, it zooms in a little bit more, and you can see, hey, there's a lot of these populations, but almost all of them are in the Mexico and the Central America area. And so, for instance, a Cherokee or a Choctaw or Iroquois and some of those other Native American tribes, that data is not necessarily going to show up real well because they may not be closely related to some of these other people that are in the Mexico and the Central America area. So if you have some ancestry that you know about that's not showing up, then one of the things to check is to go and dive deep into each one of these areas and see if it's even possible that ancestry is looking at that kind of ancestry. And for a lot of these, it's not. And that's just because there haven't been enough people from that group or that have ancestry from that group that have tested to create a reliable reference population. So what we do need is we need more people to be tested by all of the DNA companies. Now, besides the ethnicity estimate, additional communities is one of the other special features of Ancestry, and this is a feature I really like. Now, to understand this, what Ancestry has done is they have taken the DNA of people who know their ancestry. So maybe they built out their trees and they have certain ancestors in certain places around the world, and they've created communities of these people to basically tell you what some of the DNA looks like in that area. Now, even if you don't have a tree on Ancestry, even if all you've done is taken a DNA test, it's possible that you may have some of these DNA communities. What it means is that your DNA matches some of the DNA of those other people that have been verified to be part of those communities. And so if you're just starting to research, this is a great clue about where some of your ancestors may be from. You can see with my wife, she has two communities. There's the Ohio River Valley community and the Southern Ontario settlers. So let's take a look at the Ohio River Valley. Now, once it shows you here, one of the things it tells you is, hey, there's 1 million Ancestry members that are a part of this community. Well, that's great because that's 1 million people who you may potentially be able to connect with that have some information on your ancestors. Now, granted, not all 1 million of them are going to, because this is a big area that covers all the way from Virginia into Iowa. Now, as we scroll down, we're going to be able to see some more information about this community. So one of the things it gives you is it gives you that community history. It tells you roughly what has happened and how that migration has happened and what peoples there were. But what's great about this is as we go down a little bit further, it's going to start to go every 25 to 50 years and show you some of the migration patterns of people from wherever in the world to that community. So for instance, you can see here, there's English and Scots Irish and Germans that are going to this community back in the 1700s. As we go further, we see that there's people that have been identified in your tree. Now again, this is only if you have a tree on Ancestry, but there's people identified in your tree who may be from this overall community. Now it's up to you to research and identify whether or not it is, but these are the people that may be part of that community. And it keeps on going every 25 to 50 years, and you see how that migration has changed. You see as they're starting to spread out. You can see as this community started off really in the east coast of the United States, now it's spreading into the entire Ohio Valley. And we get where now they're going over into Iowa and to where all the farming in the United States is happening. But even further on, we see that, hey, there was actually a migration over to the West Coast, and it looks like to the Portland area as well as to the Los Angeles area. So these communities are great because they give you a clue about where some of your ancestors lived. And it might be where some of your shared matches currently reside as well. So next, let's go to our DNA matches and start to understand what we can find in the DNA matches. So this is the shared matches of my wife. What this means is that all of these people share some part of their DNA with my wife. And Ancestry has arranged these from those who share the most amount of DNA to those who share the least amount of DNA. So you can see that they actually divide this up into sections. There is the full siblings section, and this would be any of your full siblings. There is the close family, and this is going to be other people like parents and cousins, maybe that share a lot, or aunts and uncles. And then it goes to the first cousin level. And this is where it might start to get confusing for people. But first cousin does not necessarily mean they have to be a first cousin. What it means is that they share roughly the same amount of DNA as a first cousin. Now, first cousins share a lot of DNA with you, so this could be a first cousin. This could actually be a second cousin in some cases. In other cases, it may be a half aunt or a half nephew. So just be aware that just because it says first cousin here doesn't mean it absolutely is. It just shares about the same amount of DNA as a first cousin. The next grouping is second cousins, and just like with first cousins, this could be people who really are second cousins, or it could be people who share similar amounts of DNA. So for instance, a first cousin 2 times removed shares the same amount of DNA as a second cousin would. And what you'll see is that unless you have your close family tested, there might only be 1 or 2 people in those first few categories, but by the time you get to second cousin, there's going to be a few, and then you get to third cousins, there's going to be more. And that's because we have a lot of third cousins, and then it has also a group of fourth cousins as well. So again, be aware that this isn't absolute as far as what relationship they are, but it is a good start for understanding how much DNA they share with you. Now, for each of those matches, there is some information. So first off, it says what the estimated relationship is. So with full siblings, you're either a brother or a sister, and it's going to be able to tell by the DNA whether this is a male or a female, so it's going to know whether it's a brother or a sister. With most of the other relationships, it's going to give you a range. So for instance, here we see that, hey, this is close family to first cousin. This is actually an aunt of my wife, and so that falls right within that close family to first cousin. It might say something like first to second cousin, or as we go down further, third to fourth cousin, or fourth to sixth cousin, or distant in that case. And that again is related to how much DNA they share with you. Now, as you interact with these people and get some more information, you might find that, hey, this person who's listed as a third to fourth cousin is really a fifth cousin, or maybe they're just a second cousin. Again, these estimated relationships are just that. All they have to go on is the amount of shared DNA, but it's up to you to make contact with them and to determine how you are related. The other thing that this is showing here is it's showing how much DNA you share. So this is measured in centimorgans, and usually if you are a parent with a child, it's going to be about 3,500 centimorgans. And each relationship more distant than that is going to be much less than that. So in this case, this is a sibling, and this is an aunt, and this aunt shares about 1,500 centimorgans with my wife. It also tells you how many segments that is shared across. Now, a segment is just a chunk of DNA. Ancestry doesn't have a chromosome browser, so you can actually see where these segments are, but on some of the other websites, and when you download your raw data and upload it to them, you can actually see where these different segments of DNA on which chromosomes that person matches you. The next bit of information is going to be whether or not these people have a family tree. So you can see in this case, this person does have a tree, and it's got 301 people in it. You can also see sometimes people have a tree, but they haven't actually linked their DNA to that tree. And we can also see some people, they don't actually have a tree at all. This might give you a little clue as to whether or not this person has done some research already and how much about their family ancestry they know. Another bit of information is, hey, whether or not there is a common ancestor on that tree. And by knowing whether or not there's a common ancestor, then you might already know how you can be connected. This last part of the column is area that you actually control. So you can add people to different groups. You may star people based on who you're researching at the time. You can also add notes to help you know what it is that this person is related to you, or how they're related to you, or any other information that you want to put in there. So you control that information in the last part of the columns. So let's go and let's see what some of these different. Right now, I'm going to go and I'm going to click on my wife's aunt, and we're going to take a look at what that page is. So this is the match page, and you can see from this match page that there are a couple of different areas that we are going to be looking at. There is the trees section, which is where we are already. There's the ethnicity section, and then there's the shared matches section, and we'll go through each one of those. But right now on the tree section, the biggest thing from this is this shows the tree that this person has. Now, it's up to you to determine how that may fit in, but what you can see is there's actually some common ancestors already linked on here. Over on the left-hand side, it says that these two people are probably common ancestors, in case they are, because this is Devon's aunt's parents, which would be Devon's grandparents. As we go down further, you can see that now there's some common surnames that are found in both of the trees. So this is another good help if you already know what some of your surnames are that you're researching. And the final is the map. Now what this is this is a map of locations where both of your ancestors were born. And so you can see that in Columbus over here, there was 12 ancestors that were born in the Columbus area that you both have in your trees. So these are some great tools to help you identify where your trees might be crossing over together. Next, let's go and take a look at the ethnicity estimate. This is the ethnicity estimate page, and really what it is doing is comparing your ethnicity estimate with your match's ethnicity estimate. And that's why they asked the one question of whether or not you wanted to share that ethnicity estimate with other people. And you can see right here that it has you on one column and it has your match on the other column. Now, since this is her aunt, we actually expect them to be very similar, and they are. In fact, other than the Ireland, Scotland down here, they share all of the other same groups. Now the percentages are a little different, and that's expected because again, these are estimates, and we already saw that that estimate is really a range of numbers. The other great thing is the map over here, which actually shows you which ones you have that your match doesn't have, which ones you both have, and which ones your match has that you don't have. Finally, it also shows those shared migrations, those communities. And so in this case, my wife and her aunt, they both have this Ohio River Valley community shared in common. And finally, we're going to go now to the shared matches page, and that's going to give us some more information that we can particularly use in our genealogy research. So this is the shared matches page, and what is on this page is those people who have DNA that matches both you and the match that you've selected. So in this case, it's my wife and her aunt. And you can see on here there is her brother, there is some first and second cousins, and it's all organized in the same way. Now this list is going to be shorter, but the nice thing about this is if you know how you're related to this match, so in this case my wife's aunt, she's related through her mother, all these people have to be related through that same way. So this is going to be through her maternal grandparents. But you see, it contains the same information. There's going to be an estimate of what that relationship is, the amount of shared DNA and the amount of segments shared, whether or not there's a tree, and if a common ancestor has already been identified on that. And then there's also going to be this box of other information that you can add to it to help you keep your DNA organized. Now, I said I wasn't going to go through lines because my wife is making some other videos on that, but this has just been an intro into what information is on Ancestry DNA and what you can find. So if you have any questions about your Ancestry DNA and what one of those bits of information that you're seeing mean, put it in the comments below and I'll try to answer it. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your friends.